You know that iconic ending of The Godfather, the door slowly closing on Kay's horrified face as Michael Corleone becomes the very thing he swore he'd never be? Chilling. Perfect. But what if it didn't happen that way? What if, in some alternate universe, the story took a sharp turn at the last moment? Picture this. Michael, standing in that shadowy study, the weight of his choices pressing down, but instead of coldly lying to Kay, he hesitates. One flicker of doubt, one moment of humanity. And suddenly, the entire fate of the Corleone family shifts. Sounds impossible? Maybe. But that's the beauty of what if? We've all wondered about those pivotal moments in films, the ones where a single decision could rewrite everything. The Godfather isn't just a masterpiece because of what did happen, but because of how close it came to unfolding differently. So let's rewind. Let's step into that world where power, betrayal, and redemption collide, and ask the dangerous question: what if Michael Corleone's soul wasn't completely lost? Because here's the thing about tragedy, it feels inevitable in hindsight, but in the moment, there's always a choice. And that's where our story begins. Let's rewind to that moment, the one that still sends chills down your spine. Michael Corleone, standing in his father's old office, the dim light carving shadows into his face. He's just orchestrated a massacre. Barzini, Mo Green, even his own brother-in-law Carlo. The bodies are barely cold, and yet he's never looked more in control. Then comes Kay, sweet, hopeful Kay, who still dares to ask, "Is it true?" And what does Michael do? He lies, smooth as silk, cold as marble. No, but here's the kicker. It's not just the lie, it's how he delivers it. That slow, deliberate calm, like he's already erased the man he used to be. And then the door closes in Kay's face. Not just a physical door, but the final barrier between Michael and the abyss. He's crossed over the war hero, the good son, the man who swore, "That's not me," gone. In his place, something far more terrifying, a true dawn. But why does this ending work so well? Because it's not just about power, it's about corruption as an inevitability. From the very first scene, we see Michael resisting the family business, only to become its most ruthless architect. The tragedy isn't that he fell, it's that he chose this, step by step with full awareness. Think about it, the baptism scene, the chilling contrast of sacred vows and brutal murders. Michael's face as he renounces Satan while becoming him. Coppola doesn't just show us a gangster, he shows us the process of a soul's erosion. And by the end, there's nothing left to erode. But here's what's fascinating. Michael's fate feels sealed in hindsight, but was it really? What if in that final confrontation with Kay, something had cracked? What if, for just a second, the mask slipped? Because remember, this isn't a villain who enjoys evil. He's a man who rationalizes it. And rationalizations, they're fragile. One moment of doubt, one flicker of guilt, and the entire house of cards could have collapsed. Which makes you wonder, what if it had? Picture this. Everything unfolds exactly as before. The baptisms, the killings, Kay's trembling confrontation. But this time, when she asks, "Is it true?" Zurinya, Michael doesn't answer right away. There's a beat, a silence so thick you could choke on it. His jaw tightens just for a second, but it's enough. Kay sees it. The hesitation. The ghost of the man she married flickering behind those dead eyes. And then, he doesn't lie. Instead, he says nothing. Turns away. Walks to the window, his back to her like a man carrying the weight of 1,000 graves. That's all it takes. No denial. No cold reassurance. Just the deafening truth of his silence. Kay doesn't need words now. She knows. And instead of the door closing on her, she walks out. Not in hysterics, not in tears, but with this awful quiet clarity. She's already gone before Michael can even turn around. Now, here's where things spiral, because without that final lie, Michael's facade starts crumbling. He's won the war, eliminated every enemy, but for what, the second Kay leaves, he's alone with the monster he's become. No more pretending, no more for the family. Just the hollow victory of a man who traded his soul for power, and knows it. Imagine the next scene. Michael sitting in Vito's old chair, the office darker than ever. No triumphant music, no loyal men waiting. Just the echo of Kay's footsteps fading down the hall. And then he laughs, a bitter broken sound. Because the cruel joke, he did everything right, played the perfect game, and still lost. This ending isn't about redemption, it's about reckoning. The moment the mask slips, and even Michael can't ignore what's underneath, he doesn't get caught, doesn't get punished, just sees himself clearly for the first time, and that's worse than any bullet. But here's the haunting question. Does this make him more dangerous or less? A Don who knows he's damned has nothing left to lose? Unless that flicker of guilt isn't the end, but the beginning, which takes us to an even wilder what if. Now, let's flip the script entirely. What if Michael's cold calculus failed him at the last moment? Not with silence, not with hesitation, but with something far more dangerous, remorse. Same setup. Kay confronts him, voice shaking. Is it true? But this time, when Michael opens his mouth to lie, he chokes on it. Maybe it's the way she's looking at him. Not just hurt, but disillusioned, like she's staring at a stranger. Maybe it's the weight of Carlo's death, the memory of Fredo's betrayed face. Whatever it is, the words don't come. And then he breaks. Not dramatically, not with tears. Just a quiet, devastating admission. Yes, one word, that's all. But it changes everything. Kay staggers back, but Michael keeps talking. Not excuses, not justifications, just the ugly, unfiltered truth. How he planned it, how he needed to do it. And worst of all, how little he feels now that it's done. It's not a confession, it's a surrender. The moment he stops pretending, even to himself. Now, imagine the fallout. Kay doesn't leave, not yet. She just laughs, a hollow, broken sound. You really think telling me makes it better? And here's the twist, she's right. His honesty isn't redemption. It's worse. Because now there's no denying he chose this. Not for family, not for survival, for power. Cut to the next morning. The Corleone compound is eerily quiet. No celebratory breakfast, no loyal soldiers. Just Michael, alone at the table, staring at the newspaper headlining the murders. And then, a gunshot. But it's not an assassin. It's Clemenza, or Tessio. Someone he trusted. Because in this world, a Don who shows weakness doesn't get to keep his throne. The very ruthlessness that got Michael here, it's the reason his empire crumbles the second he falters. This ending isn't just tragic, it's ironic. Michael wins the war, but loses himself. And the second he realizes it, that's the moment his kingdom abandons him. No grand death, no operatic betrayal. Just the quiet, inevitable consequence of building an empire on blood. But here's the chilling thought. What if this was always the real price of power? Not the killings, not the lies, but the isolation that comes when you finally see the monster in the mirror and realize you put it there. Which makes you wonder, is there any version of this story where Michael gets away clean? Or was the corruption never just in his actions, but in his soul all along? What makes these alternate endings so fascinating isn't just the plot twists. It's what they reveal about the terrifying elasticity of the human soul. The original ending shows us corruption as a done deal, but these what-ifs expose the fragile hinges it turns on. One moment of hesitation, one unplanned truth, and suddenly the entire moral architecture of Michael Corleone's world collapses differently each time. Take ending number 1, where Michael's silent complicity becomes his punishment. There's a brutal psychological truth here. Sometimes awareness of your own monstrosity is worse than any external consequence. It's the Nietzschean nightmare. He who fights monsters and all that. Except Michael doesn't just become the monster. He sees the transformation in real time. And that visual changes everything. Modern psychology would call this moral injury. The trauma not of doing evil, but of knowing you've crossed a line you can't uncross. Then there's ending number 2, where honesty backfires spectacularly. Here's where it gets really twisted. Michael's confession should be redemptive, right? Except in the Machiavellian world of the mafia, vulnerability is fatal. This isn't just storytelling, it's a dark mirror of real-world power dynamics. Think about Stanford's prison experiment or Milgram's obedience studies. Once you buy into a system that rewards ruthlessness, any deviation becomes self-destruction. Michael's tragedy isn't that he's evil. It's that the structure he operates in punishes goodness. And this brings us to the central paradox. The Godfather isn't about crime. It's about systems, how they shape us, how they trap us. Vito's famous line, "I refuse to be a fool," dancing on the strings held by all those big shots, is ironic in hindsight. Because Michael, he becomes the ultimate puppet, not of rival dons, but of the very rules he thought he was mastering. Which makes you wonder, is any of this really about choice? Or was Michael always just following the script written by his father's world? The chilling answer might lie in something as mundane as game theory. In the prisoner's dilemma of mafia politics, betrayal isn't just likely, it's rational. Keep lying, keep killing, or get killed. The system rewards sociopathy. But here's where art punches deeper than science. Because unlike clinical experiments, The Godfather shows us the human cost of these systems. The way Kay's love curdles into horror. The way Michael's eyes go dead long before his body would. It's not just about power corrupts. It's about how corruption empties you, even as you win. So, where does that leave us? With three versions of the same truth. The original, corruption complete, the door slams shut. The silent reckoning, corruption acknowledged, but too late. The confession, corruption confessed and punished by its own rules. Each path leads to hell, just different circles of it. Which raises one last uncomfortable question. In a world that rewards monsters, is there any way out that doesn't end in tragedy? Or was Vito's greatest mistake not pulling Michael into the business, but ever believing the business could be humanized? Because maybe the real horror isn't that men like Michael fall, but that the system was designed so perfectly to make them. So here we are. 3 doors, 3 versions of Michael Corleone, and the same devastating truth behind each one. No matter how you rewrite that final scene, the tragedy sticks like a knife between the ribs. Because maybe the real horror of The Godfather isn't that Michael became the monster, but that he never stood a chance to begin with. Think about it. Every what if we explored The hesitation, the confession, the cold silence, they all lead to the same destination. Isolation. The system Vito built, the rules Michael mastered, they were never designed to let a soul slip through intact. Power like that doesn't just corrupt, it consumes. And the most heartbreaking part? Michael knows it. That's why the original ending hits so hard. Not because the door closes on Kay, but because it closes on us, the audience. We're left staring at the final product of a machine that grinds up good men and spits out ghosts. But here's where you come in. Because stories like this, they're not just about the characters. They're about us. What we see in them, what we fear in ourselves. So, let's turn the tables. What's your door closing moment? The second you realize someone you loved was gone, even if they were still standing in front of you? The time you made a choice that changed you in ways you couldn't take back? Or maybe, just maybe, the moment you didn't cross that line, precisely because you'd seen how it hollowed out Michael Corleone? That's the magic of cinema. These aren't just stories, they're mirrors. And the reflections they show us can be just as terrifying as any horror movie. So hit pause on this video for a second. Let's make this a conversation. Drop a comment right now. Which ending wrecked you the most? The original's chilling finality? The silent unraveling? Or the brutal irony of the confession? Could you have walked away from the Corleone family? Be honest. We all like to think we'd be the hero, but power has a way of whispering pretty lies. What movie ending would you rewrite? Scarface? Breaking Bad? Titanic? Okay, maybe let Jack freeze either way, but you get the idea. And while you're down there in the comments, don't be a stranger. Smash that like button if this video got under your skin. Every click is a tiny rebellion against the algorithm gods. Want more deep dives into the shadows of cinema? Hit subscribe. We've got Taxi Driver, Chinatown, and No Country for Old Men lined up for the same treatment. As for me, I'll leave you with this. The genius of The Godfather isn't that it shows us evil winning. It's that it makes us understand why. And in that understanding, there's a warning, one that echoes long after the credits roll. So tell me, when your moment comes, which side of the door will you be on? And yes, that's your cue to start typing. I'll be reading every single comment. Try me.